The stars looked different now that humans could reach them. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova, watching the blue and green swirls of distant galaxies through the main window. 3 months ago, this view would have been impossible. 3 months ago, faster-than-light travel was still a dream. Now it was reality, and humanity was no longer alone in the universe. "Captain, we're getting a signal," said Lieutenant Tony Garcia from his station. "It's coming from that large ship approaching us." Jake turned to look at the massive vessel moving toward them. It was unlike anything humans had ever built. The ship seemed to be made of crystal and metal combined, stretching for miles in every direction. Smaller ships flew around it like insects, around a lamp. This was their first meeting with aliens, and Jake felt his heart beating faster. "Put it on screen," Jake ordered. The main display showed a tall, thin creature that looked like it was made of living crystal. Its voice was cold and emotionless when it spoke. "I am Kethmore of the Galactic Council. You are the species called humans from the planet Earth. You will prepare to receive our delegation aboard your vessel." Jake looked at Ambassador Lisa Brooks, who stood beside him. She was Earth's top diplomat chosen for this historic first contact. She nodded slowly. "Tell them we welcome their visit," Jake said. An hour later, the alien delegation arrived. Kethmore was even more impressive in person, standing nearly 8 feet tall with crystal formations growing from his shoulders and arms. Behind him came 2 other aliens. One looked like smoke given form, floating rather than walking. The other was covered in thick fur and had 6 arms. "I am Ambassador Lisa Brooks," Lisa said, stepping forward. "Welcome aboard our ship. This is Captain Jake Morrison and Colonel Ryan Hayes, our military advisor." Kethmore looked at them with eyes that glowed like stars. "You humans are new to space travel. You do not understand how things work in this galaxy. We are here to explain." They moved to the ship's meeting room. The aliens sat across from the human delegation. Kethmore placed a device on the table that projected images in the air above them. "This is the Galactic Council," Kethmore began. "We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. 12 ancient civilizations make up our governing body. We maintain peace and order among all species." The images showed magnificent cities floating in space, vast fleets of ships and countless alien worlds. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "When a new species achieves space travel, they must follow certain rules," Kethmore continued. "These rules have kept the galaxy peaceful for millennia. 847 species have accepted our guidance. Now it is your turn." Colonel Ryan Hayes leaned forward. "What kind of rules?" The smoky alien, who called himself Velthon, answered. "First, you must surrender all military technology to the Council. War is not permitted in civilized space." "Second," added the furry alien named Gorth-Ul, "your population must not exceed 2 billion individuals. Overpopulation leads to resource conflicts." "Third," Kethmore said, "all technological development must be approved by the Council. Dangerous technologies threaten galactic stability." Lisa felt her stomach drop. "And if we refuse?" "Refusal is not an option," Kethmore replied. "Species that refuse our guidance receive corrective measures. These measures ensure compliance." "What does that mean exactly?" Jake asked. Kethmore's crystal face showed no emotion. "It means we remove the threat. We have done this before when necessary." The room fell silent. Ryan's hand instinctively moved toward his weapon, but Lisa caught his eye and shook her head. They were outnumbered and outgunned by ships they couldn't even understand. "How long do we have to decide?" Lisa asked. 30 of your Earth days, Kethmore said. "This is more time than most species receive. We are being generous because you seem reasonably intelligent." "And if we agree to your terms," Jake asked, "then you will be classified as a Category 7 developing species. You may trade with other approved worlds. You may travel within your home system. You will be protected and guided by the Council's wisdom." "Protected from what?" Ryan asked. "From yourselves," Velthon answered. "Young species often make mistakes that lead to their destruction. The Council prevents such tragedies." The meeting continued for 2 more hours. The aliens explained how other species had benefited from council rule. They showed images of peaceful worlds where alien civilizations lived simple, controlled lives. Everyone had enough food, shelter, and work. Crime was almost unknown. War was impossible. It sounded like paradise to some, and like prison to others. When the aliens finally left, the human delegation sat in stunned silence. Lisa was the first to speak. "We need to contact Earth immediately." "What are we going to tell them?" Jake asked. "The truth," Lisa replied, "that we have 30 days to decide if humanity will remain free or become slaves." The message reached Earth 12 hours later. President Kate Sullivan called an emergency meeting of the Global Defense Council. Leaders from every nation gathered in the underground command center beneath Geneva. "Let me understand this correctly," said General Chris Martin, the head of Earth's military forces. "These aliens want us to give up our weapons, limit our population, and ask permission before we invent anything new?" "That's correct," Lisa said through the video link from the Terra Nova. "They call it protection and guidance. I call it slavery." Dr. Amy Foster, Earth's leading xenobiologist, disagreed. "Maybe we should consider their offer. They've maintained peace for 10,000 years. Perhaps they know something we don't." "They know how to control people," Ryan said from the ship. "I've studied their data. Every species under their rule follows the same pattern. They start with advanced technology and end up as farmers and craftsmen. No space travel, no weapons, no freedom to choose their own path." President Sullivan rubbed her temples. The weight of humanity's future pressed down on her shoulders. "What happens if we refuse?" "They have thousands of ships," Jake reported. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. If they decide to use force, Earth wouldn't stand a chance in a direct fight." "Then we don't fight directly," General Martin said. "Humans have been fighting against overwhelming odds for thousands of years. We've learned a few tricks." "This isn't a movie, Chris," Dr. Foster argued. "These are real aliens with real weapons. If we resist, they might destroy us completely." The debate continued for hours. Some argued for acceptance, believing it was better to survive under council rule than to risk extinction. Others demanded resistance, saying that life without freedom wasn't worth living. Finally, President Sullivan called for quiet. "We have 30 days to decide," she said. "I want options. Military options, diplomatic options, and alternatives I haven't thought of yet. Humanity didn't crawl out of caves and reach for the stars just to bow down to the first bully we met." The room buzzed with activity as advisors began making plans. Earth had 30 days to find a third option between slavery and destruction. In space, the Terra Nova continued its patrol while massive alien ships watched from a distance. The Council was patient. They had waited 10,000 years to build their perfect galaxy. They could wait 30 more days for humanity's answer. They had no idea what that answer would cost them. 29 days had passed since the Council's ultimatum. The alien ships waited at the edge of Earth's solar system like vultures circling a wounded animal. They expected humanity's surrender. Instead, they found something that had never happened before in 10,000 years of galactic rule. Captain Ben Clark stood on the command deck of Liberty Station, one of 12 massive defense platforms now orbiting Earth. Through the thick windows, he could see the blue marble of his homeworld, below, and the dark shapes of alien vessels in the distance. The past month had been the busiest in human history. "Captain, we're getting movement from the alien fleet," reported Sergeant Mike Davis from the sensor station. "Looks like they're finally coming." Ben nodded. He had been expecting this moment. "Signal Admiral Turner on the Defiance. Tell her, it's time." The human fleet moved into position between Earth and the approaching aliens. 31 ships against what looked like 200. The numbers were not in humanity's favor, but numbers weren't everything. Ben had learned that lesson in the Army before he joined the Space Force. Admiral Grace Turner commanded the human fleet from the bridge of the Defiance, Earth's first true warship. She was a small woman with gray hair and steel in her eyes. Had spent her whole career preparing for wars that never came. Now at age 58, she was about to fight the most important battle in human history. "All ships, this is Admiral Turner," she said into her communicator. "Remember what we're fighting for. Not just our lives, but our right to choose our own path among the stars." The alien fleet stopped just outside Earth's orbit. It was massive and beautiful and terrifying. Ships of crystal and metal, vessels that looked like living creatures, and craft that seemed to bend light around them. Each one was larger than anything humans had ever built. A communication came through on all frequencies. The voice belonged to Council Admiral Zethan Ka, a member of the Vorthak species. Humans of Earth, your time has expired. Surrender now, and accept Council guidance. Your resistance is pointless. Communications Officer Tony Garcia, now stationed on the Defiance, looked at Admiral Turner. She nodded, and he opened a channel that would broadcast to every ship in both fleets. "This is Earth Defense Command," Tony said, his voice steady despite the fear in his chest. "Earth declines your offer. Please leave our system." The alien response was immediate. "You cannot be serious. We offer you peace and protection. In return, you threaten us with your primitive weapons?" Admiral Turner took the microphone from Tony. "We didn't ask for your permission to exist, and we won't ask for your permission to remain free. Last chance. Leave now or we'll make you leave." The silence that followed lasted for 10 long seconds. Then Admiral Zethan Ka's voice returned, filled with disbelief and anger. "You would fight us? Your entire species would die for nothing more than pride?" "Not pride," Turner replied. "Freedom. There's a difference." What happened next shocked both fleets. The Council ships fired first, but they were warning shots. Bright beams of energy struck empty space near the human vessels. It was meant to demonstrate power and force surrender. The human response was different. Admiral Turner's order was simple. All ships open fire. The human fleet didn't fire warning shots, they aimed to kill. The space around Earth lit up like a festival of death. Human missiles streaked toward alien vessels while energy beams carved through the darkness. The aliens had expected fear and submission. Instead, they met weapons designed by a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. Captain Lucy Anderson commanded the destroyer Sharp Edge. Her ship was small compared to the alien vessels, but it moved like a hunting cat. She targeted the engine systems of a crystal ship 3 times her size and fired everything she had. "Direct hit," called her weapons officer, Lieutenant Dan Miller. "Their ship is losing power." The crystal ship tried to return fire, but human vessels were built for speed and maneuverability. While alien ships were designed to look impressive and intimidate enemies into surrender, human ships were designed to fight and survive. The battle raged for 3 hours. Human ships darted between the larger alien vessels like bees attacking a bear. They couldn't match the aliens' firepower, but they didn't need to. They just needed to hurt them enough to make them think twice about conquest. Commander Rick Stone led a squadron of fighters in suicide runs against the alien command ships. His small craft couldn't do much damage, but they could get close enough to target critical systems. One by one, alien vessels began to lose power, communications, and weapons. "This is impossible," Admiral Zethan Ka broadcast to his fleet. "How? Are these primitives fighting so effectively?" The answer was simple. The Council species had grown soft during their long rule. They had forgotten how to fight against enemies who fought back. For 10,000 years, they had faced only species that surrendered quickly or died quietly. They had never encountered a species that turned war into an art form. Captain Helen Ross piloted the cruiser Thunder Bay directly into the center of the alien formation. Her ship took heavy damage, but she managed to destroy 2 enemy vessels before pulling back. The aliens were learning that humans didn't fight to win. They fought to make victory cost more than defeat. The turning point came when Lieutenant Commander Paul Young discovered something in the alien communications. While monitoring their radio chatter, he heard arguments between different species in the Council fleet. Some wanted to retreat. Others wanted to use more powerful weapons. A few were questioning whether humanity deserved extinction for simply saying no. "Admiral," Paul reported to Turner, "they're not as united as they pretend to be. I'm hearing at least 3 different opinions about what to do with us." Turner smiled grimly. "Then let's give them something to really argue about," she ordered. A coordinated attack on the alien flagship. Every human ship that could still fight converged on the massive vessel that carried Admiral Zethan Ka. The aliens tried to protect their command ship, but doing so meant pulling vessels away from other parts of the battle. The attack succeeded. The alien flagship didn't explode, but it was badly damaged. More importantly, it was humiliated. A ship that had conquered dozens of worlds was nearly destroyed by creatures the Council considered primitive. Admiral Zethan Ka's final transmission was filled with rage and disbelief. "This is not over, humans. You have shown us your true nature. We will return with more ships, more weapons, and no mercy." The alien fleet began to withdraw. They had lost 60 ships to humanity's 8. More importantly, they had lost something they hadn't lost in 10,000 years. A battle against a species that refused to submit. As the alien ships disappeared into the darkness beyond Earth's orbit, the human fleet regrouped. They had won the first round, but everyone knew it was just the beginning. The Council would return with overwhelming force, and next time, they wouldn't make the mistake of underestimating humanity. Admiral Turner broadcast a message to Earth, and to every human ship in the system. "Today we prove something important. We prove that saying no to tyranny isn't just possible, it's necessary. The Council controlled everything because no one ever bothered to fight back. We just changed that." On Liberty Station, Captain Ben Clark watched the alien fleet disappear and wondered what would come next. The Council had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, but they had never faced anything like humanity before. The question wasn't whether they would return. The question was whether humanity would be ready when they did. Earth had 30 days to prepare for the Council's first attack. Now they had to prepare for their revenge. The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. In the Council's capital city on the planet Nexus Prime, Supreme Commander Vex Thule of the Zephyrian military slammed his crystal fist on the command table. The sound echoed through the vast chamber like breaking glass. "Impossible," he growled to the assembled Council members. "These humans destroyed 60 of our ships with their primitive weapons." The 12 species that made up the Galactic Council sat in their floating chairs around the circular room. Each representative looked troubled. For 10,000 years, no species had successfully resisted their rule. Now a group of newcomers had made them look weak. "Perhaps we underestimated them," suggested Veltan, the Vorthak Council member. "Their weapons may be crude, but they use them with surprising skill." "It doesn't matter," Vexthul replied. "I am assembling the largest fleet in Council history. 2,000 ships from all member worlds. When we return to Earth, there will be no survivors to tell stories of resistance." Meanwhile on Earth, the celebration of victory was short-lived. President Kate Sullivan stood in the war room beneath Geneva, surrounded by her advisors and military leaders. The walls were covered with displays showing alien ship movements throughout the galaxy. "They're mobilizing everything," reported intelligence analyst Carol Davis. She had been working around the clock to intercept and decode alien communications. "Ships from all 12 Council species are heading toward a gathering point near the Vega system." General Chris Martin studied the numbers on his tablet. 2,000 ships. That's 20 times larger than the fleet we just fought. "We knew this would happen," Admiral Grace Turner said through the video link from the Defiance. "The question is what we do about it." Engineer Sam Peterson had been working non-stop since the first battle, upgrading every human ship and weapon system. His team had studied the wreckage of destroyed alien vessels and learned valuable information about Council technology. "I've got good news and bad news," Sam reported. "The good news is that their weapons aren't as advanced as we thought. They rely on intimidation more than firepower. The bad news is that 2,000 ships is still 2,000 ships, no matter how primitive their weapons are." Dr. Alex Wright's research team had made discoveries that changed everything humans thought they knew about the galaxy. "I've been studying the history of Council rule," he said. "What we found is disturbing." Alex activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy's political map over the past 10,000 years. Hundreds of star systems were marked in different colors. Each red dot represents a species that refused Council rule, Alex explained. "There are over 300 of them. Every single one was completely destroyed. Their worlds were burned, their populations eliminated, and their names erased from galactic records." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Humanity wasn't the first species to resist the Council. They were just the first to survive the initial contact. But here's the important part, Alex continued. The Council didn't always rule through fear. Originally, they were a peaceful alliance. The systematic destruction of resistant species began about 5,000 years ago, when their member civilizations started to stagnate. Carol Davis had been listening carefully. Stagnate how? Their technology stopped advancing, Alex replied. Their populations became comfortable and lazy. The only way they could maintain control was through overwhelming force and the fear of extinction. So they're not invincible, Admiral Turner observed. They're bullies who've gotten fat and lazy. Dr. Amy Foster, who had originally supported peaceful cooperation with the Council, now looked grim. I've been analyzing their communication patterns. The 12 species don't actually trust each other. They stay together because they're afraid of what happens if they split apart. This information gave President Sullivan an idea. Carol, can you intercept more of their internal communications? Already working on it, Carol replied. I've identified several channels they use for private conversations between species. Some of them are very interesting. Captain Lucy Anderson had been running stealth missions to gather intelligence on Council movements. Her ship, the Shadow, was equipped with experimental cloaking technology that made it nearly invisible to alien sensors. I managed to get close enough to their assembly point to record some conversations, Lucy reported. They're arguing about humanity. Some species want to negotiate. Others want total extermination. A few are questioning whether they have the right to control other species at all. The most surprising discovery came from Dr. Wright's historical research. I found something in the old records, he announced. Before the Council became tyrannical, there were dozens of free species that traded and cooperated without a central government. The galaxy wasn't always controlled by fear. What happened to those free species? General Martin asked. Most were conquered or destroyed by the Council, but some might still exist in hidden colonies or distant systems. If we could find them and make contact, President Sullivan saw the possibilities immediately. We wouldn't be fighting alone. The plan that emerged was risky and complex. While Earth prepared for the inevitable siege, human agents would attempt to contact other species that might be willing to resist Council rule. At the same time, intelligence teams would work to create division within the Council alliance. Commander Rick Stone volunteered to lead a dangerous mission to the outer rim of the galaxy, where free colonies might still exist. If there are others out there who want freedom, they deserve to know they're not alone. Captain Helen Ross would take her ship behind enemy lines to make contact with conquered species on Council worlds. Every tyranny falls eventually, she said. Sometimes they just need someone to show them it's possible. The most dangerous mission fell to Captain Ben Clark. He would take Liberty Station's entire intelligence network and attempt to infiltrate Council communications directly. If we can turn their species against each other, we might not have to fight all of them at once. As the human agents prepared for their missions, the Council fleet continued to grow. Supreme Commander Vex Thule had gathered vessels from across the galaxy. Ships that hadn't seen combat in centuries were pulled from storage and crewed with soldiers who had never faced real resistance. This time, there will be no mistakes, Vex Thule announced to his commanders. The humans will serve as an example to any other species that considers defying Council authority, but the Council was about to learn something that 10,000 years of easy victories had taught them to forget. Sometimes the smallest spark can start the largest fire. Humanity's refusal to submit had already begun to inspire others. On a mining world in the Centauri sector, workers of the Kelvani species whispered about the humans who had fought back and won. On the agricultural planet New Harvest, farmers of the Taluki species wondered why they needed Council permission to grow their own food. The galaxy was waking up from 10,000 years of sleep. Species that had forgotten what freedom felt like were beginning to remember. And at the center of it all was a small blue world whose inhabitants had made a simple choice. They would rather die free than live as slaves. The Council controlled everything, but control based on fear has a weakness. Eventually, someone stops being afraid. Humanity had stopped being afraid and their courage was becoming contagious. The largest fleet in galactic history was moving toward Earth, but it was carrying more than weapons and soldiers. It was carrying the seeds of its own destruction. The Council's great armada reached Earth's solar system like a storm cloud blocking out the sun. 2,000 ships from 12 different species formed a wall of metal and crystal that stretched across space. Supreme Commander Vex Thule stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and smiled with satisfaction. No force in the galaxy could stand against such power. But when the alien fleet arrived, they found something impossible. The human ships weren't clustered around Earth in a defensive formation. Instead, they were scattered throughout the entire solar system like seeds thrown by the wind. "What are they doing?" demanded Admiral Zethan Ka, who had demanded to join the final battle after his earlier defeat. "Why aren't they protecting their homeworld?" Admiral Grace Turner, commanding the human fleet from the Defiance near Jupiter's orbit, had gambled everything on a strategy that no sane military commander would attempt. Instead of defending Earth directly, she had spread her forces across 9 planets, dozens of moons, and hundreds of asteroids. "All human ships, this is Admiral Turner," she broadcast on a secure channel. "Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to make them understand that controlling us will cost more than leaving us alone." The battle began when Supreme Commander Vex Thule ordered his fleet to advance toward Earth. He expected the scattered human ships to retreat and form a traditional defensive line. Instead, they attacked from every direction at once. Commander Rick Stone led the first strike from behind Saturn's rings. His small squadron hit the alien fleet's supply ships, destroying months of food and fuel in minutes. Before the Council forces could respond, Stone's ships disappeared into the asteroid belt. Captain Helen Ross attacked from the direction of Mars with a different strategy. Her ships didn't try to destroy the alien vessels. Instead, they targeted communication arrays and sensor systems. Suddenly, parts of the massive alien fleet couldn't talk to each other or see what was happening around them. Lieutenant Commander Paul Young had spent weeks preparing the most important part of the plan. While the space battle raged, he activated a network of transmitters hidden throughout the solar system. These devices broadcast a simple message to every species in the galaxy. "This is humanity calling all free peoples," the message said. "The Council tells you that resistance is impossible. We are proving them wrong. If you want freedom, take it. If you want justice, fight for it. You are not alone." The message was broadcast in over 300 languages, including many that the Council thought were extinct. On worlds across the galaxy, oppressed species heard the words and realized something amazing. The humans were right. They weren't alone. The first rebellion started on the mining world Kepler 442b, where the Kelvani workers had been treated like slaves for centuries. When they heard humanity's message, they seized control of their minds and declared independence. Council forces on the planet tried to stop them, but the workers had learned to fight from studying human tactics. Similar uprisings began on dozens of worlds. The Taluki farmers on New Harvest destroyed the Council's food processing centers. The Zephyrian crystal miners on Rigel Prime refused to produce the materials needed for Council weapons. The aquatic hydros on Ocean World sank every Council ship in their harbors. Supreme Commander Vex Thule watched his perfect galactic empire begin to crumble. Emergency messages flooded his command center. Rebellions were breaking out faster than his forces could respond. Entire star systems were declaring independence. "This is impossible," he roared. "How can so many species coordinate simultaneously?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Admiral Zethan Ka had been monitoring Council communications and discovered the truth. The humans didn't coordinate the rebellions, he reported. They simply inspired them. Every species chose to rebel on their own. But the most devastating blow to the Council came from within their own fleet. Captain Ben Clark's intelligence operation had been working for weeks to intercept and manipulate Council communications. Now their efforts paid off. "Commander Vex Thule," came a transmission from the Vorthak section of the fleet. "Our homeworld is under attack by rebels. We are withdrawing our ships to defend our people. You cannot leave, Vexthul replied. We have the humans surrounded. Surrounded? Admiral Velthon of the Vorthak laughed bitterly. Look around you. They're everywhere and nowhere. This isn't a battle, it's a nightmare. The Vorthak ships began to turn away from Earth. Other species quickly followed. The crystal-based Zephyrians needed to return home to stop worker rebellions. The plant-like Verdani faced ecological warfare on their garden worlds. The insectoid Cathera discovered that their hive queens were being influenced by human propaganda. Broadcasts, Admiral Grace Turner saw her chance. All human ships converge on the remaining Council forces. Show them what happens when you corner a species that refuses to die quietly. The final battle was swift and brutal. The Council forces that remained were confused, demoralized, and cut off from reinforcements. Human ships attacked like a pack of wolves, striking hard and fast before disappearing into the darkness of space. Captain Lucy Anderson's stealth ship materialized directly behind the Eternal Dominion and fired everything she had at the flagship's engines. The massive vessel lost power and began to drift helplessly through space. Supreme Commander Vex Thule found himself trapped on a dead ship, watching his empire collapse around him. The communication channels were filled with reports of successful rebellions, fleeing Council fleets, and species declaring their independence. The war ended not with humanity's surrender, but with the Council's dissolution. Representatives of the 12 species met on the neutral world of Haven Station to discuss terms, but instead of negotiating with a unified council, they found themselves talking to individual species who were tired of 10,000 years of authoritarian rule. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to Admiral, represented humanity at the peace talks. The alien representatives were no longer the arrogant rulers who had demanded Earth's submission. They were nervous, divided, and desperate to prevent more rebellions. What do you want from us? Asked the Zephyrian representative Keth Moore, who had delivered the original ultimatum to Earth. Nothing, Jake replied. We want you to leave us alone. We want you to leave everyone alone. The age of the Council is over. The treaty that emerged created something the galaxy hadn't seen in 10,000 years, the Free Worlds Alliance. It was a voluntary association of species based on cooperation instead of control. Earth became not a conquered world, but the unofficial capital of a new galactic order. President Kate Sullivan gave the closing speech at the treaty signing ceremony. She stood before representatives of hundreds of species, many of whom had been enslaved for millennia. The Council controlled everything because no one had ever bothered to say no, she said. They ruled through fear because they convinced you that resistance was hopeless. But hope is like a flame. It only takes one spark to light a fire that burns across the galaxy. The ceremony concluded with something unprecedented in galactic history. Species after species stood and formally declared their independence from tyrannical rule. The Council that had controlled everything for 10,000 years simply ceased to exist. In the months that followed, humanity helped establish new governments, trade agreements, and defense treaties. The galaxy became a more dangerous place, in some ways, but also a more free one. Wars broke out between some species, but they were honest wars between equals, not the systematic oppression of the weak by the strong. Admiral Jake Morrison often stood on the observation deck of Earth's new orbital station and watched ships from dozens of species coming and going. They came not as subjects seeking permission, but as equals seeking cooperation. The Council had controlled everything until Earth replied back with a simple word: no. Sometimes the most powerful word in any language is the one that refuses to accept the unacceptable. And sometimes saying no to tyranny is the first step toward saying yes to freedom.